Hey, welcome to Web3 Weekly with your host, Blockstar Technology.
Let's go. Hello, everybody that's on all our social medias. We're currently, Nathan's streaming to Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter. Is there any ones I missed? Facebook as well. And we're here for episode 59, and we've got our guest, Leanne, who is doing a lot of interesting things in the Web3 space. Leanne, if you want to do an introduction on yourself to all the people listening and watching.
Yeah, for sure. Good to be here. Thanks, Charlie. My name's Leanne Batts. I do a number of things in the Web3 world, some of it related to sports, but then also my passion piece is really building this technology to better the world, and including carbon removal or kind of, redefining climate action, if you will.
And that's so cool. So I'd love to know how those two things came together. So Charlie was explaining it to me before, like here you are wanting to save the world and reduce carbon, and you're like, you know what, blockchain. So yeah. What was the thought behind it?
It is a good question. I will give you the kind of full story here. I was your very average, I guess, consumer, concerned with the climate, but not actually doing too much more than maybe recycling, right? So I'm very much like everyone when it comes to this. I'm not some sort of eco warrior or living my life perfectly by any stretch of the imagination. But after I became a mother, I call it like a cocktail of, I think, mother guilt, right? Far too little sleep mixed with one too many climate documentaries. And I was like, wow, this is not cool. This is really, really bad. I have to do something. I can't leave, this to my son to fix. We're going to hand him a broken planet without any hope to fix it. So I need to get my butt into gear. With that, I went out and did the whole thing that we do. You try and I sold my car. I started walking everywhere. I started buying secondhand clothing. Like, this is secondhand. I still do this kind of stuff, but really found like, gosh, the ways to kind of be climate active were not that attractive. They're not that cool, and they certainly aren't working. We're still heading well in the wrong direction. But knowing the statistics and the passion that I felt about wanting to do something different, I knew people, if we had a way to do it that was way more engaging, way more fun, way more pleasurable, lots more people would do it. And at the same time, I was going down the Web3 rabbit hole myself. And of course, the headlines around Web3 at the time were how terrible this is for the planet. And so part of my role in sports is I actually consult to a number of sporting brands, including New Zealand Rugby or the All Blacks, as head of Web3. And, so I was sort of looking at this world very deeply, but also had the sustainability mindset, thinking, well, if this was so bad for the planet, how can this possibly be the way that we're going to move forward? But what it did was made me look under the hood. Instead of just getting swept up in what was the glorious fun of, say, NFTs and the communities that were kind of on the surface and what was the hype, I really had to go underneath and go, well, what are these consensus mechanisms? Which is where I found smart contracts. And then that's where I found the power of this technology, right? The fact that we can kind of immutably program anything now to do stuff without the need for trust, without the need for any kind of ongoing, maintenance or manual or human interaction in theory. And I thought that was just amazing. Like, I know it sounds nerdy, but I was like, wow, imagine what we can do with these things, including programming carbon. Because one of the problems is, like, we might still, as a consumer, I know I do it when I shop online, I choose the sustainable option. I just have no clue what that actually means. I have no idea if it's actually resulting in anything. And one of the problems with this is often it's not. It's not, but even if it is, I have no idea. So I have to trust who I'm doing that with. And I believe there is a world out there, not that far away, where we don't actually have to do that anymore. It's just something that is simple, programmed in. We know what's happening. Here's the proof.
And it's funny that you say that, because we hear that all the time. Like, I feel like at the moment, sustainability and all of that stuff is a real catchword, a trend word. And like with everything, everyone's jumping on the hype. You've got people saying like this is green, but a lot of it's just greenwashing. Like what did Woolies do? They brought in that green, the green bag, but it's just like 10% of something else, but it's still completely garbage.
Oh,
and they call it greenwashing.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think, yeah, you're absolutely right, because
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people, consumers, want to do the right thing and they will take that option. And a lot of the times we're like, well, like, that makes us feel better. Like, who knows where it ends up? But you're right. I see a future where soon we'll be able to no longer trust, we can verify. Right, Charlie?
Yep. And that's the beauty of blockchain technology and smart contracts.
Exactly.
So, Leanne,
Yeah.
with the obviously you were in Web3 as a job, New Zealand Rugby All Blacks, and you'd been watching documentaries about environment and whatnot. What
Yeah.
did you just wake up one morning and go, you know what, I'm gonna create this smart contract standard that's gonna help everyone to alleviate this and help the world? And how did that come about? With like, was there a lot of sleepless nights with being a mother as well during all of that? And
Yeah.
it is hard
Yeah.
learning, when you jump into Web3, just getting your head around it all, never alone understanding
Absolutely.
how the smart contracts are working and the technology
Yeah.
to building your own business
Yeah.
around that. How was that
And it's
journey?
really great the way that you've applied it as well.
Yeah.
Applied it to what you want
Yeah.
to do with it.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's still early, right? We're still working in these very early phases, but it did not happen overnight. No way. I'm nearly sort of 3 years on from first coming up with, I think there could be something here, to understanding exactly how that will still play out. But I think there was a moment where I woke up and said, NFT, there's something here with NFTs, and I didn't quite know what that was, but what I did see was the fact that these tokens kind of aligned communities around the world that didn't even have to know each other, coordinated them, and kind of aligned incentives. And so that was the first thing that goes, oh, there's something here. And then I found smart contracts and I was like, oh, that's even better, because, it helps with this. So it's really like doing a jigsaw puzzle. And it's painfully slow, and sometimes you just don't want to do it at all. You're over it. Why am I doing this? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's just life of a founder. That's just comes parcel of what you're doing here. But knowing that you're kind of inching towards something and unpacking something the whole time, keeps you going, I think, and keeps you kind of chasing it. But certainly did not come overnight. It's really from a whole culmination of things. And, if I had to relate it to anything, I don't know if you've seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire. He sits in the seat and he can answer all 10 questions.
Yeah.
I can probably answer 6, 4 are yet to come, and they'll come from my experience in life and things that I'm unpacking along the way. So, yeah, I think I'm on that journey still. But we're at a point where we've come together with, say 6 of these answers and mash them all together. Strange sort of way.
That's such a cool analogy. You mentioned that the thing that you love. I'm going to use that, by the way, later. I've got 6.
I love
it. So you mentioned that the thing that you love about NFTs is the communities that globally they've built. Is that something that you're looking to do? Like build a really solid community of like like-minded people that want to save the world, people that love NFTs, love the future of technology. Like, what's your vision for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely what I want to do, because I feel like, rightly or wrongly, there's people like me, and it's not just about people that want to save the world, but it's more like building this for people that want to do something. I want to do something. I don't know what it is, but make it easy for me and I'll do it. And can we have fun with that? Can we take away the anxiety that comes with, when you know too much about this world? And absolutely, I think it will. I think every brand in the future will have to put community at the heart of it. I just think that is inevitable. That is what the evolution of the internet's going to enable. But when you look at younger generations, they already want that connection. And I just think that that's kind of going to be the way forward. But what kind of community will this be? Hopefully more so for everyone, with the mainstream. The mainstream people that go, God, I want a better world. I want to do something and I want to have fun with that. And I want to feel lighter about it rather than heavier about it. Hopefully we'll build that place.
I love how humble your answer is. You're like, not saving the world, but if everyone took that one step to do something, we would save the world, right? So very
we're on a whole better path anyway.
No. I was just going to say, so Leanne, for any of the listeners out there, what is the process that Trade Cool does to remove carbon from the world, including with the NFTs. For say, if me being a user and I was to mint a Trade Cool NFT, what is that process during that? And would I be able to know how much carbon I've offset as well?
Yeah, for sure. So the way it works and what we've built so far is what we call the ERC Cool. Now, this gets a little technical, but I'll try and keep it light. Effectively, what it is a piece of code, and they call it an interface. But really, what that means is it can be plugged in and is composable with any smart contract. So, if you're thinking about a non-fungible token or an NFT, that's usually an ERC 721. What happens is the ERC Cool can come into that token, and then the creator of that token can charge it to remove carbon. And we call it a cool down rate. And effectively, what you do is go 1% of whatever's going through this. If I'm going to sell this thing, 1% of it will go to the cool down rate. And from there, that will hit what we call our delegate smart contract, which is effectively that immutable bit, the bit that goes, great, we're now going to remove carbon. The really cool bit and the exciting bit, I think, for this and where the future of Trade Cool will really kind of focus is the proof of that, right? So again, if we're going back to our original story, you'd buy the T-shirt, it's sustainable because it's tagged that way on the front end of an e-commerce site, but the consumer has no idea really what happens in the background. But what we actually do at Trade Cool is automatically tokenize the impact. So as the carbon's removed, we then use a fungible token that we call Cool Factor. And what we do is we actually only can make that when we've removed carbon. And then we make it, budgeted against or balance it against the carbon removed. So 1 kg of carbon removed equals 1 Cool Factor. And you as the consumer will then get that back to your NFT. And you can redeem that Cool Factor or factor for short. And you'll know down to the gram how much carbon you've just gone and removed.
Wow.
And then what we want to do with that Cool Factor token is have fun, right? The whole point is like the ERC Cool contract has done the job. That's done the hard work, the action, the heavy lift, if you will. The Cool Factor token is really about celebrating what we've just gone off and done. And what fun can we have with that? And in a lot of ways, that turns into this kind of open rewards and open loyalty that, again, is very Web3, but really allowing people to have kind of agency over what they've done and the rewards that they've had. We want to obviously offer ways that will be rewarded and you can come back and get experiences with us, but allow that to be something that's open and accepted by other brands as well.
So you mentioned remove carbon, and I don't want to sound ignorant, but what does that mean? You're going to plant a tree? What are we doing there to remove the carbon?
Yeah, really, 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 really good question, right? Because again, on my personal journey into this space this is another rabbit hole I went down, but like, this place is crazy. And so when you look at the voluntary carbon market, majority of it's made up, and this is about 95% of it, in fact, is not made up of removing carbon. It's about preventing it, right? So when you look at our problem, what we've done for the last couple of decades, or if not longer, since, definitely proven since the 60s, but since the Industrial Revolution, really, is we've been pumping carbon up into the air, more so than nature can ever cope with, right? So it's put ourselves out of balance. So now what we have is a really high concentration of carbon in the air. People talk about that as like parts per million, generally. Yeah. And one of the tasks we have to do is stop pumping it out and also pull back what we've, the excess that we've already put there.
Yeah.
Some people kind of refer to this in a way like a bathtub. Like if you've got a bathtub, you've got the tap on full bore and you've also got the plug-in. So what's going to happen? This thing's going to overflow. And we're really, really near overflowing at the moment, right? And once it's overflow, that's it. It's very difficult to come back from because nature starts to get into its own cycles. So what we must do is work to turn off the tap. Now, that is preventing future carbon from going out there, right? And so that's like by 95% of this voluntary carbon market is made up of. So, could it be green energy, for example? Things like tree planting is a removal, but it's a temporary source. So this was, again, coming back to nature, is nature's meant to have carbon in the cycle. We need some carbon. Carbon's actually like the very formation of life. And so when a tree is planted, it'll store carbon while it's alive and in its root system. But when it dies, that carbon goes back up into the air. So it's only a temporary store. Oh. So 95% is working towards turning off that tap, which it's not doing a fantastic job of at the moment, but it's doing a job. But to get to that kind of net zero, we're also going to have to remove carbon because we're not going to be able to turn off the tap completely. Plus, we've got the job to do of, even if we did stop emissions overnight, we're in a position now that we've been pumping out carbon for so long, we still have to go and pull it from the air.
Yeah.
And we have to pull it from the air in a way that it's stored away permanently. Now, this brings us to the very kind of, it's a kind of an end of the spectrum of the carbon removal market and industry, but they call them like engineered or tech-based carbon removal solutions. So what these things are, there's a varied number of them, but things like one's called direct air capture, and it's nearly what you just pointed out, but no word of a lie. Picture a massive fan sucking in the atmosphere. What it does is an awesome piece of chemistry at this level, and actually takes CO2 and converts it back, breaks it up, pumps the oxygen back out, and then stores the carbon underground. And these things are scaling up around the world. Right. But they can store carbon up to 1,000 years. They believe forever, but but no one's really kind of actually studied it that long. So things are really, really permanent, right? And effectively just reversing the effects that we've already had on the planet. And it's time to kind of do that job. The thing, though, with the end of the spectrum is it's a whole lot more expensive, right? It's quite cheap to go up and plant some trees, and it's quite cheap to avoid, someone else putting out a carbon credit in the future. And kind of turning off that tap, if you will. But what's not so cheap is high-end new technology. Yeah. So the part that Trade wants to play is to be an early purchaser in this, because like all technology, as soon as you start to use it, more people come, this thing can scale up the volume curve and down the cost curve. Yeah. And then we make these things far more viable and far more used at scale, if you will. So that's where we're trying to be, and the role we're trying to play, and hence why I said we're truly not saving the world. We're playing one very small part, but we want to play that part and play it really well, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. And where did you, clearly you have done some reading and research on this, I can tell. I'm learning more. I'm learning more on this podcast than I have in a long time. So where did you come across these machines or this technology?
Yeah. Well, I told you there were two rabbit holes I went down. One was Web3 and the other was carbon. And in particular, it's like carbon credits and what kind of is actually going on there. There are marketplaces that sell this stuff, believe it or not. You have to know what you're doing. And this is why it is so hard for brands want to take part. They want to do this stuff. But imagine the level of and degree you have to go to understand this world, understand what actually is worthwhile. And that's why we need things like us connecting, the brands that want to have a go at this, make it super simple, super easy, super low cost, but just connect us into what we need on the other side, which isn't simple to understand. It isn't simple to go out there and you've got a day job, you've got your own needs and wants, and figuring this out is not really something that's easily doable. So precisely why we want to play that part and connect these brands and consumers to this end of the carbon market, which is actually quite difficult to do at this point in time.
And I feel like the idea you're presenting is actually quantifiable. It's not just like, here we go, let's hope for the best. It's actually going towards something that is, like you said, is a proven way to do it, is a clear model that would work. And the way you explain it so simply with the bathtub and stuff, I feel like everyone can understand that. I can understand it, so I'm assuming most other people can too. So,
so Leanne, we've spoken about the carbon credits, the carbon market. What is the process of that? So if someone is to buy carbon credits, who creates the carbon? Who creates the carbon credits, and then what can people do with those carbon credits once they've got them for a business, for instance?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The projects that I talked about, they're the creators of the carbon credit, if you will, as in they do the work. Then you have to have a layer of independent verification to call it a carbon credit. Mostly true, but this carbon market is all over the show as well. This is, again, where blockchain is going to come in and really help this market, not part and parcel of what we're playing, but will really help the kind of standardization of these carbon credits globally. So what would happen in a kind of perfect scenario is, producer or project would remove carbon. The independent verifier would come in and go, yep, that's a carbon credit. Then a seller or a marketplace can then list that. And then someone like myself or Trade could go and buy that. So really, that's the way it works. There are a lot of nuances in going into the depths of that. But what do you do when you buy that? Now, there's sort of two things that can happen. One is that you can trade it, right? So these carbon credits are not necessarily retired. So the way the carbon market works is that it's not really accounted for until you've retired it. And that means taking it out of supply. What we see in blockchain is people bridging carbon. So they're bringing these carbon credits on chain and making that more liquid so you can actually trade carbon. Why that's quite good is that it puts a price on carbon. So all of a sudden it becomes interesting to do this. That increases people creating carbon or carbon removal on that side of the market, if that makes sense. But what TradeCool will do is not take part in that. What we're here to do is actually retire and pull and store away the stuff forever. We're not interested in the mechanics of the market in terms of trading or anything like that. So what we're trying to do, and if you were busy there, what you might do is actually get into the lower end of the carbon and then try and drive the price, because that's how you might make money. We're trying to buy the most expensive stuff and make that cheaper. So we're not trying to monetize the actual carbon credits or the asset of carbon ourselves. What we will do is always retire them. Now, as I explained, we're working in this kind of end of the spectrum of the carbon market. What we're sometimes doing, or often doing, is buying what they call a future vintage. So what we're doing is actually paying up front to a company that has this technology going, we want to buy the one next year because we want to fund you and keep you going and keep your kind of trajectory happening. You won't actually remove that carbon until next year, but when you do, then we'll retire it. So often what we're working is what they call a futures market, which is an increasing part of this space, because we need this technology, we need it to scale, and we need to kind of ensure we're funding these things. And it's actually a model taken out of the vaccines market, so which have been really successfully implemented there. So when they were trying to research how to solve and vaccinate against these diseases, they did the same thing. They said, we believe that you'll come to it, we'll fund you now, and then we'll have a cut of all the product when you actually create it. And so the way it's working now is mostly for us future vintages, but what we do is retire them upon maturity.
So you mentioned that people are now going to trade these carbon credits, and there's a value on the carbon. Do we think that there's a potential for that to be productive in terms of actually fixing this problem? As soon as there's money involved and you're putting a value on something and they're trading it, what can you see that kind of going against what your intentions are? I know that's probably a weird question, but
no, not at all, right? So look, it absolutely is. Like, if carbon is pulled around and then traded hands, we're not really getting anywhere. We need the stuff to be retired. We need more credit, more credits hitting the market, all the rest of it. But what they do is tend to devalue over time. So say a tree carbon credit, remember I said that's a temporary store of carbon. So if you've bought a credit that happens to be pulled from a forestry, 20 years down the track is what they kind of estimate that'll house that carbon for 20 years. So you buy that carbon credit, roughly it's only going to be valid for 20 years. And again, there isn't the infrastructure or the standardization to go, it's going to expire in 20 years. But kind of the way it is and looked at, like, if you're buying old carbon from 2007 and it was sort of like questionable whether that thing even happened anyway, probably going to charge a lesser price for that. So the interesting thing about the carbon credit market is at the moment it's treated quite like a fungible token, like a ton of carbon is a ton of carbon. But we all know that they're really not that fungible. There's very big differences in terms of quality and metrics that go into it. But does that market is it good or bad? And I think it's a bit of both, right? It certainly doesn't help us, again, if everyone's just trading this, which is sharing money around and not actually getting anywhere with this stuff. But like what I said is, money does help the market start. Like, this is the whole thing that kickstarts it. So like, we play this early purchaser role for these new technologies that helps scale it up, volume, down cost. If there's money to be made by creating carbon removal and carbon credits, more people will do it. It brings people to the market. And so if trading allows us to put a price on carbon and a good price on carbon, then people will make carbon, because that's just how free markets work, right? So it definitely plays a positive part in that sense. And then I would say if nothing's ever getting retired, it's not so great. But yeah, it's a bit of both.
I find it so crazy because, to be honest, that's the first time I'm hearing about this amazing technology that can do that. And I feel as though, like, why is the government not doing more? Why are they not investing in these machines? It's crazy that it's up to like private companies or corporations to be funding this when, it's all of our problem and we pay a lot of tax. So why is the government? That's probably a political question, but all right. Sorry. Cut that, Nathan.
No, I mean, you raise a good point. I mean, I know you guys are sitting in Australia, and Australia is leading in this sort of technology, maybe not carbon removal per se. I know there is some work going on there, but Australia is arguably led with solar, which again, to decarbonize, we have to turn that tap off, and mainly turning that tap off means moving our electricity from, fossil fuel based sources into renewable sources. So, I mean, there is a lot of positive stuff happening. We don't tend to hear about it so much. And certainly with this like tech carbon dioxide removal side, no one really knows about it, but it's becoming kind of the sexier way to do. And again, part of the role we want to do with Trade Cool is go, look at this cool stuff happening. We don't need to feel fear. We don't need to feel these things. We just need to put our efforts in the right place. We can turn this around, So it's a bit of a fresh and hopeful kind of view. And, maybe we'll teach some people some new things and go, oh, this is not so bad. This is all right. We can do this.
You're definitely giving us hope. I feel a lot more hopeful knowing that.
Yeah, and I'm blown away by the carbon market in general. It's sort of like its own stock market. It resonated with me a lot on cryptocurrency tokens, where sort of you can burn your tokens if you want and decrease supply. Yeah, and also I guess with that is, I know what you mean with people just selling that around, but I guess the reason why, from my limited understanding, is if a business hits a certain amount of carbon output, they either have to pay the government extra taxes, or they have the opportunity to buy these carbon credits. But once they buy them for like that financial year, once a business buys a bunch of carbon credits to, say, offset their tax, what happens with it then? So they obviously will get a tax saving, but are they forced to, I'll just use the terminology of burn those carbon credits, or do they have to give them to the government, and that's how it sort of decreases and levels itself out? Or do they buy them and then offset their tax and then go and on-sell them? Like, what?
And I want to add to that. And if we're paying the government a carbon tax, why are they not using that money to buy these machines?
And that too.
Solve the world.
Questions.
No, I mean, yeah, exactly. So in terms of like, I'm not a super expert here on how this works in policy and all the rest of it, and it will be different per country. But effectively, what you're saying is correct. So you're an emitter. In order to avoid like the kind of the big stick from the government and in terms of tax, you're forced to go, or not forced to, but go out and purchase these carbon removals. Or carbon credits, I should say, to offset, right? So bring it back to, net neutral. So what you're emitting, you can kind of offset. The problem with that is, one, these clean energy credits or things that are not actually removing carbon can be used. So if you think about that from a mathematical point of view, I've emitted 1 ton of carbon. I've told someone else not to emit 1 ton. The result is still 1 ton.
Yeah.
So unless I've gone out and got someone to remove it and remove it permanently, we aren't going to net zero, which is, again, back to my point on why we're on this end of the spectrum. So at the moment, you can still do that. What you will have to do, though, is retire those credits. Otherwise, you can't account it. You can't use it for your accounting or put it on your bottom line unless you've retired it. So the burning mechanism, if you will. And I believe that is standard. Like you can't be counting. You can't just hold this carbon and go, don't worry, we've got carbon. And then, once that year goes, you just biff it off and sell it. I mean, I'm sure that does happen. But as far as I know, it has to be retired in order to be accounted against. But it's not particularly a world I'm an expert in. You've got about the limit of my knowledge in that space.
Yeah. And that's interesting. I've got to learn more on this carbon
I'm gonna Google
market.
this as soon as I get
we're
out.
all going off the
There's like a whole nother world out
I'm
there.
going down this rabbit hole with you. I'm going to be emailing you like, guess what I found?
Yeah. And
I like it.
Leanne, I follow Traco as well, and I bought one of the Book.io NFTs. So how did that partnership come about, and how
let's talk about the NFTs.
How was that that partnership going, and how did they find it? Would like to know a bit about the Book.io partnership with you guys.
Absolutely. So, we managed to, as it now maybe 2 weeks ago, announce our very first partner. So someone that actually adopted the ERC call, put it into their smart contracts, and actually remove carbon. So our awesome partners were called Book.io. And Book.io are a book marketplace, but they predominantly sell ebooks, but obviously on blockchain, they are NFT books. So you're actually not only just licensing your digital book, you own it. And obviously what that gives us the chance to do is actually program in this carbon removal. So just over 2 weeks ago now, we managed to launch the world's first carbon removing book. So as you bought this book, carbon is removed. If you are to on-sell that book, because it's yours and you own it, more carbon will be removed. So every time this thing trades or tracks around the internet, more carbon will be removed, and that's perpetual and immutable. No one can change that now. So what you do is take the action of reading and turn it into climate action, which for me is exactly where we want to be, right? Like we want to go, you want to read this book anyway, you want to do this, and now you can do it with some purpose behind it. What Book.io, so the relationship with Book.io actually came out of support from Polygon. So Polygon blockchain have been hugely supportive to us in supporting us in, I guess, what we're trying to achieve, because they play such a kind of role in the sustainability space. They were always about, scaling Ethereum in a kind of sustainable way. And so, they've been hugely supportive of what we're up to and got us involved in their ecosystem, introducing us to Book.io in the first place. With Book.io, the idea is that there'll be more books to come, right? So we've started with one, we'll move to many, and we're also exploring now print books, which will be pretty awesome. And Book.io have been amazing. And this is their words. They actually have been speaking to publishers who think this could be kind of like revolutionary for the publishing industry. Because what you have is an industry that historically has kind of been on the wrong side of the story by cutting down trees, printing into books, and then having that impact on, I guess, the world. And people know about it. People still love books and still want to read books and still should be able to do so. But to do so in a manner that's not so extractive, and Traco can help there, of course. So
that is so
cool.
So can I just ask a couple of questions about that? Sorry, guys. I mean,
go for it.
Deep dive on this.
So
is that built into the cost of the book?
Yeah. So what happens is it's really Book.io that lose, if you will. So they're the ones that go, 1%. I think they've actually put 10%, if I'm not wrong. I'd have to go and check the code, but I'm pretty sure it's 10%. So you come along, you buy your book, say, it's, what is it, $20, make the math easy, 10% is $2. $2 is going to go to us as Traco, and we're going to go out and buy carbon removal with that. So whatever the $2 buys us, it'd be a few kgs. Boom, you've removed a few kgs. And of course, now when this sells on the secondary market, what will happen is say, I'm the one selling it to you. Whatever price I set on it, that 10% will still go. So I won't get the 10% that's like that. So it works like a royalty. But the thing is, it's programmed in, right? So you know this when you buy the book, and you know this when you sell the book, that's going to automatically happen. So that'll keep going as long as this book trades around the internet.
And did you say that when they buy those things, when you burn it, they get something back, or did I get confused? What are the little fees? So is that right?
The funds. You're bang on. So what happens is you've gone in and bought your book, and as mentioned in the background, what's happening with the technology is that's popping out to buy some carbon credits. And what will happen to you as the consumer is, so you'll have your NFT book in your wallet, and then what you'll also be able to do is bring it to our Traco website, connect your wallet, And what you'll see there is what we call our cool factor token. Now, the cool factor token will tell you precisely down to the gram how much carbon you've removed. And I think actually from the books, at the price that was sold, we removed 2.12 kgs per book or something like that. Again, I'd have to go away and check exactly. But the point is that where Trakel's not yet minting these cool factor tokens, but we will do one day in the near future, you'd actually be able to take those 2.12 tokens. Maybe they're recognized in, I don't even know, a Nike store, and Nike go, great, well, you've got 2 tokens, 2 cool factor tokens, we'll give you 10% off. Obviously it'll be a little bit different in terms of ratios and all the rest of it. But, there's a way then for brands to kind of recognize the good that you've done somewhere else and actually draw you into their ecosystem. So you can see how this quickly kind of turns into what is an open loyalty play or an open reward system.
Well, Leanne, I think that's so cool, and I hate to do this.
Carry on.
But you're going to be like, no, not again. I just think, since it's something that can be programmed in smart contracts and we're looking at saving the world, what about introducing it to wholesalers of the CBDC? It's practically almost like a little tax that's built in. So the banks, we all hate them, and the government that are rolling out wholesale CBDCs, why don't you approach them and have them do something good for once, and build that in, and that way it's a programmable money. It's like a little carbon tax. It's we get the money and they pay for something like saving the planet for once. How about
that? I mean, absolutely possible, right? From a tech point of view, that's absolutely possible. Politically, would it happen? Maybe not, but let's see. But you're absolutely right. Things, exactly. And things like, these micro actions, these things that are just kind of happening all the time, they should be what we're looking to kind of integrate this into. Of course, books are wicked, and people buy books and regularly do so, and all the rest of it. But what we want to have is a day where your entire lifestyle could be just chipping away at this. From the clothes you buy, from the shoes that you have, everything that you do online, all your interactions, the money that you're using, the payment providers you're doing. They could all be having this little tiny impact each single time, and that'll add up, and it adds up at scale.
Yeah. And do we think, or would we hope that, the people want to do something, but let's face it, the cost of living is starting to impact us all. Would we want to see this as being something that's brought in from corporations because they want to do the right thing? Or are we going to end up seeing something that resembles a carbon tax that is just weighing on the consumer at the end of the day? We all want to do the right thing, but then in your example, if everywhere we go and we buy a shirt and we buy this and we buy that and suddenly we're paying carbon taxes on everything, what are your thoughts on that? I hate the word tax.
Absolutely. So I think, that's sort of the way it works, right? But I absolutely feel that this is not the consumer's job to pay for this. It should be factored into the cost of good, right? So you actually see this in examples today, right? So we have airline tickets. You'll go and buy your airline ticket, and it'll actually often ask you, do you want to offset this flight for, and it's usually not much money, which kind of draws red flags immediately anyway.
Yeah.
But it'll say, even for 53 cents, do you want to offset this flight? And there's a click button and an opt-in, and I, the consumer, have to pay for that. Statistically speaking, 1% of people will tick that box. Because I think all of us feel like, well, if it's 53 cents, just put it in the price of the ticket. I wouldn't even know, and I'll feel better and call my flight carbon neutral. One, that's a better way to do it from a psychology point of view. But two, I think there's a lack of another lack of trust there. But we don't believe that we should be the ones paying for it. You're the one making money out of this product. You must understand how this is impacting the environment and what you're doing, and that is that has a cost on the earth that you need to be responsible for, in theory. So the evidence is pretty clear that consumers want this. They just don't want to be the ones that have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, especially over and over and over again.
And if we did, we'd all be offsetting our footprints now. Those things exist. There's 101 companies out there where I can go and buy trees and feel better about my life. No one does it. I mean, there are. Don't get me wrong. Actually, there's amazing people that do it. And this is where I started. But then I thought, how many people are realistically going to do that? How many people feel like they should do that? How many people can afford to do that?
Yeah, exactly.
But if this thing was woven in and included, along the journey and the cost of making the good, in theory, and we got a benefit out of that, it's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah.
And there's nothing different to how emails go out and get, like if I buy at a certain store, I might get my emails, my Qantas points or something like that. Same thing happens. There's a cost that goes in, it gets absorbed by the company. They do it because it engages you. The cycle kind of happens again. So this is very much the same as that.
And I would like to see the companies and the corporations that, are getting all the revenue and profit of making all of this stuff, then be the ones that contribute to the payment rather. Like, I really hope, like, the one thing I am, daunted by carbon credit taxes is that it doesn't end up being another tax that they find a way to pass on to the consumer. I want to see the people that are really profiting from actually creating so much of this carbon, factories, the footprint, them be responsible for it rather than passing everything on down to the consumer. And I hope that there's a way that we can track that and make sure that they're still being responsible for what they're doing rather than making us feel good because we're helping them pay off their carbon debt. Like, I just...
Yeah, for sure. And I think with the way blockchain technology is going, we're going to see it across everything, right? So again, what we're doing is sort of one very small consumer-facing part to play. But when you start to look at using blockchain for supply chain, will it be able to get proof of what's happening through these supply chains and how people are taking responsibility from on the way? And my dream is, like utopia is that that's all actually done. We're buying what is sustainable products off the shelf, plus they're doing a little bit more and actually creating this negative effect. Like we're actually then making this, net negative effect on what's out there. And again, I think blockchain technology is really well designed to kind of deal with that. And for the first time, throw transparency on this and go, okay, you haven't dealt with it here, so you can't claim anything. And then at least consumers will know for sure whether that's true or not. And so I think, look, we're a long way from that kind of just been happening, but that is kind of the utopia vision of what blockchain can do to this whole area and industry.
And it's great to see because I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm asking.
You keep going.
I feel like consumers are finally being heard because there was an example that I watched not long ago. Actually, I had to study it for my legal course where they were saying that consumers, sometimes you'll go into like Woolies or Coles and I'll use tuna as an example. There's a can of tuna on the bottom shelf and then there's a can of tuna that is like 6 times as much because it's like making claims like organic or I don't know what organic like out in sea. But there's actually, you're paying all this extra money, but there's no way for you to verify what the hell's in that can and where it came from. But people are paying extra money just because they've written it and no one checks. So I think it's about time that we held companies responsible for the claims that they make and for the people that buy into those claims. And this is a really great way to keep it transparent, to verify and to actually, would they say half the meat that people are buying is not even correctly labeled? Like, so it's like, that's daunting. That's
absolutely. I'll shed some hope on this again because I've seen some awesome companies working in this sort of supply chain and provenance, I guess, of this world. It's quite a task because you've kind of got to organize all this. But I do really see a world where, those badges and those things that we see as a consumer on the very end of the, user journey are actually, only able to be given or proven if they've met metrics along the way. And we'll be able to double check that by just scanning it, our phone and going, oh yes, it is what it is, or it isn't what it is. But you're absolutely right. I mean, like you said, it's very trendy. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. If you say it, the metrics are clear. Like it helps you make more money. It helps you sell at a premium. But it must be trusted, or not even trusted, but verified. If we're going to make it worthwhile.
I actually came across an interesting one like that. I believe it was Scallops in Japan, and they were using blockchain technology, and they've sort of got their app. And it even had an introduction to the fishermen, so you got to know the fishermen and sort of their history, which was cool. And then they had the travel trajectory of that boat because everything's GPSed, and then going to the wholesaler to go to the retail store, and then you're able to scan that and see the whole process and see the background of the people who caught it. And I think over the 2 years of them using this in shops, the actual value of those scallops went up by 10% because people were that interested in buying it and knowing exactly where it came from.
I definitely feel like scallops.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. But the interesting one, Leanne, you touched base on the book.io and how the NFTs and the carbon credits are working on there. Was really, say there's a book for $100, for instance, or let's go $20 as we did before, and that $2 comes off the first sale. But then if that book, because it's an NFT, it's going to exist forever. Even if someone goes and sends it to a burn wallet, it's still going to be there, or they lose access to their wallet, it's still there. But if that book keeps getting transferred around and around, you're actually potentially buying a lot more carbon than the actual original sale of the book. So the book could be $20, but in 10 years from now, there could be $2,000 worth of carbon that's been offset, depending on how much it's been traded.
Yeah, correct. And that's what I love about this technology, right? Because it's something that allows us to program something in perpetually. So what you actually do is you take this kind of innate object of a book, say, yes, it's digital, but it could be physical too. And that now gets transferred or transformed into, what is a climate action tool? This thing's actually going to be, going around the internet, pulling down carbon perpetually. And imagine the world, with many of these things going out there happening, you have to use your imagination of these things moving around the internet. But yeah, if they're out there doing a job and it's all on default, then that's a world I'd like to see anyway. And that's the kind of vision with this, is imagine if we could just fold that into a bunch of things. Imagine if we can fold it into what is lifestyle, what is popular culture, so we can kind of bring change to people rather than try and make people change. And this can be step one of anyone taking action, basically.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, Leanne, this is such an awesome idea. Your son's going to be so impressed as soon as he understands how carbon credits work. Like, yes, Mom. Like,
what else made me do? Yeah, well, like, no word of a lie. I think on the website it even says, like, why am I doing this? Well, I hope that my son might think I'm cool one day. We all know as they get older, you get more uncool. So maybe he'll look back and go, at least
he'll start off cool, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So Leanne, in your opinion right now, for your vision of the company, like, who are your ideal people that you'd love to partner with? I feel like after this podcast goes out, there's going to be so many projects and people that are doing things and they have smart contracts and they're going to be like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. Like, who do you envision? Or you just want everyone, like, come on board. If you've got a smart contract, we need to reduce carbon.
Well, so first and foremost, it's open source, right? So the whole point of making the technology like this is so anyone can pick it up. They don't even need my permission. They can go and implement it right now if they really want to.
Oh, cool.
So if you're listening and want to, just go off and do it. Like, you could be an artist or creator. The one kind of caveat is that you have to know how to use smart contracts and how to mint and all the rest of it, which is not kind of mainstream just yet. But we're working on getting it into places that make it far easier for the everyday person. But for us, really, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, would be people that are already convinced that Web3 is something great. They might all be creating digital assets, because then this isn't too kind of like a bridge too far for them, and would already kind of fit into their model. So that's kind of where we're looking early. So example is obviously Book.io. That's exactly what they do. This is their bread and butter. But you look at bigger brands. They're the ones I want to get on this, because I think then that's how you break into the mainstream. For an example, Nike is a company that has great sway in terms of popular and mainstream. It would only take something like that to adopt something like this to make massive change. They are creating digital assets already. And for us as a brand, we really want to be in that space where this is mainstream. Like, this should be cool. That we want cool factor to be something that people want. and people have fun with and people enjoy. So we no longer feel like climate action is a chore, but it's a pleasure. And I think that, with the right kinds of brands that pick this up and run with it, we can create that. So we are, whilst we're focused in trying to fit into lifestyle, and it's probably a lifestyle of a Gen Z, if I'm honest, where they are, where they live, what they do, because they want this more than anyone. They don't buy into the claims that are being put out there today. They want to see their brands take action, and they want to spend their money with brands that values align, and they absolutely value that. So that's where we're really looking, but it is open. Anyone can actually go and do it right now if they so wish.
Yeah, I've got to say, Leanne, for me personally, the point of difference that I'm hearing from you is, I'm almost sick of hearing about climate change, carbon, blah blah blah. Like, I'm over it. Like, tell me what you're doing about it. Like, I'm hearing a lot about these carbon taxes, carbon credits, but the point of difference for you is you're actually telling us what you're going to do with it, how you're actually going to fix the problem, like how you're going to remove the carbon from existence. Everyone has just been talking about green and carbon credits, but I feel like it's absolutely amazing, because if you can get in front of them and say, this is what we're doing with your carbon credit, we're buying machines that suck it out of the earth. It's like, finally, I'll take my money, take it.
Remove carbon, make it fun. Like, if I had to nail it down, we want to remove carbon, we want to make it fun, like simple and fun. Get everyone doing it, as many people as possible. I'm very careful to say this is not going to be the one thing that's a silver bullet and going to, fix the world on its own. But, even if it can just inch a whole lot of people in the right direction, we're doing a much better job than we were yesterday. And that's the goal. That's the mission. That's what'll keep me going, even when I feel like not doing it. It's what we've got to do. So, it's really one of those things that, could really end up impacting it and being really big. And that's certainly where we're trying to push it and make it happen, basically.
And I have one more question, sorry.
Go.
I'm just going to get it before Charlie breathes. I know you probably answered this before, but I'm just thinking about it again. I know you've got this relationship with the companies that are building this technology, and you're investing in them, and you did a lot of research to find them. I feel like doing this and having such great support from companies such as yourself is going to act as a catalyst for more research to be done and more of this technology to come about. And I just want to know, how strong is your connection with this company? Like, have you properly invested in them, or are you just pre-purchasing some machines, or do you see yourself buying the company? Like, what's going on?
Certainly. So the relationship at this point is just a purchaser, right? So all that we want to be is a customer that isn't like particularly price sensitive, right? So we want to buy it. We want to make sure you're making money so you can make this company and scale it and make it big and bigger and better. So at this point, and I should mention that we actually purchased from a marketplace called Patch. The reason to do that is they're the ones that kind of make it all doable from regulatory point of view. So there isn't double counting. So this company can't be selling to me and someone else and the rest of it. So there are sort of checks and balances that have to come through it.
Good.
One vision is, so the way this will work is, if you remember, the flow of funds goes out. We take a cut of those funds. It's our trade call makes its money. So as the funds come in, we will hold 20%, 80% will go to carbon removal, so buying the actual credit or the product itself. With half of that 20, so 10, we will tip into what we call a company slush fund. Now, what happens with the slush fund is cool factor token holders, so the end user, the consumer, the person that's also sick and rolling their eyes about climate action, don't tell me anymore, but wants it, can come back there and can vote on how that money's used, right? So our idea is that we'll build cool things, people can propose it, and we're all in the Web3 world. You're familiar with how Nounsdale works, right? So how do we use this treasury to do cool things and give us what we want? So really kind of an ethos that's similar to that. But could that actually be then one day an equity investment into these technologies? Potentially, right? The community should decide that. And it's certainly something that I've had on my radar for a while, is like, imagine if we could actually invest into these things and actually grow them like that, which would be really, really cool. But will it happen immediately? No, definitely not. We just want to play the part of being that catalyst, like you rightly said, because it's the most important part to play right now. These companies are really not short of investment, as in, everyone knows that this is what is a great big need, and therefore a great big opportunity financially. These things are going to these are the things that are really going to come in and kind of save our butts. So these technologies have been heavily invested into at the moment, but they need customers, and we just want to play that part right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I feel like you probably have a question. So.
Well, I was about to say, because you've taken most of the time, but you've had some really good questions, Maureen. So it's good. But we're coming up to the 1 hour mark, Leanne. So for my question, I'd love to know, what has Traycool got planned coming into the future, the next year to 2 years, 3 years? And where can everybody participate in Traycool or find out more?
Yeah, for sure. So really what's coming next is continuing on the same path that we're in right now, right? Getting this adoption rate up. So we've got our first customer in Book.io. What we'd love to explore is, again, more around that lifestyle. So, can we explore things doing ticketing? Can you go to an event and that removes carbon? Yep. Can you hop on a plane ride and make that remove carbon? But also more around, fashion, digital fashion and physical. We'd love to see a world where wine removed carbon. Why not? So really just all these sort of different touch points of a lifestyle, and how we can kind of transform that into something that's climate positive, or at least having a positive effect. And so that's really kind of our mission now, is to keep this momentum going, keep working with other companies and brands in this space to keep kind of doing creative things. So that is kind of number one. To find out about us is really head to the website, which is www.traycool.co. On there, you'll find, links to go and, you can go and buy this book on Book.io. That's the main one that you can go and do immediately. Like if you want to go and get amongst. You'll also find links to the GitHub, which is where, if you are that way inclined and can create smart contracts, you're welcome to go and proliferate carbon removal into any digital assets you are creating. You do not need our permission. You just got to go for it. So those are really the kind of two ways to get involved right now. And just watch the space. Join us, follow us on Twitter. You can sign up to our newsletter. We'll keep you, posted with where we're going, what we're doing, what's coming down the track. So yeah, if you're interested, do follow along.
Thanks so much. I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Before you go, because you're about to say bye. Every time she talks, I have questions. So with that, companies that go and put their, sorry guys, I'm just curious. So companies that go and use this and put it into their smart contracts, do they have your permission to use your IP and say, like, powered by, like, drop your company's name, put your company's banner? Like, are you throwing your IP around now? Everyone can use it. And
they can use our brand. I think that there's a brand kit on the website, I'm pretty sure. And anyone's welcome to go in there and do that. They don't necessarily own the IP, of course, but they are welcome to say that this is how we're doing it. This is what happens. And of course, for us to get that cool factor token, it'll always be tracked on your wallet, but they need to know where to come. So, it's really piece of the communication to go, by the way, this is built on an ERC cool, or however you want to describe it or communicate it. And this is the benefit at the end. Why don't you take it there to go and, redeem your cool factor? Absolutely, they can do that.
Okay. That was the lawyer in me. I'm sorry.
Awesome. It's yes, definitely the Web3 culture you've got going on there, Leanne, with, hey, just come grab it, use it. I don't mind. I built it, but for you guys,
my name on the bottom, free marketing.
Yeah. I love it. Maureen always has a few questions for me around this stuff in the office. But Leanne, thank you for joining us today in our 59th podcast. We'll post this to add Nathan. You jumped the gun there. We'll get Nathan to add some links to the bottom so people can just click the link and find you and Traycool. And we look forward to the future.
Thanks
Very
for bearing
interesting.
with me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
See you, Leanne.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
Subscribe.